we stop noticing time, it just moves with in a crazy way. So um uh-oh, and now Prudence is saying it says that she has the mic. We stop noticing. Oh, but the question is, am I being heard?
You're being heard. Oh, in the room.
Yeah. Uh, but anyway, I figured she had dropped the mic, but she says she didn't. But here I have it. So I guess I better check the radio. Let me put on the radio. In the crazy way. There I am talking on the radio. So there we go. All right. So I am going to do this and turn the mic over to you, Dove, Sharon, Regis. Happy Thursday, thankful Thursday. Good morning. This mic is all yours.
Well, it's just us, but if Regis or Lynn, you want to just put your hand up. We can all. This is a fabulous lesson. It's a lesson that kind of gets you through a lot of stuff. Like when you give it to Holy Spirit, then that's really just resting, right? It's just being with the moment. So, do you want to start, Dove? You're not. I can't hear him. Can you, Lynn?
Okay. This
Okay.
is my go-to lesson for anyone who's in a conflict or has a problem. Go to lesson 109. I read
Yes.
God, because as it says, this will dispel all the clashing dreams of this world.
Right.
But what you're doing is you're saying, I really not interested in the clashing dreams. I only want to rest in God. And your purpose is everything, because your purpose will mean that you will be given true rest, which is peace.
Mm.
And peace and rest is the opening of the way to love and the way to light. Love, light, truth comes when I say to my mind, I have no interest in anything but the peace of God, to rest in God. And I always say that's the go-to lesson for anyone who is going through any kind of a problem, and the problem seems to be bigger than they are. Just, tell your problem how big your God is, as I think it's Amy Anderson who says that. Over to you, Sharon or Regis or Len or anyone.
Well, I mean, when I say I could think of Zuma, like she says that a lot, because who we truly are, is the same as the story of Jesus. We're all just the Son of God. And then what does that really mean? Well, it means that, here we are in a mosaic, really, and we're just pieces of God and we all have this power in us. And when we allow ourselves to not listen to the screams, and I'll say screams because that's what happened to me this week, of the ego, and the ego, is probably getting more vicious now for me. And I think that rest, and I got this from Regina, rest, accept, and trust. That was something that came, again, that was also from Gather. I don't know if it was from Regina or Gather, but back in the beginning, when I started this process, the advantage from my mind was that I could be on Gather from 7 till whenever I went to sleep. I was always on because I didn't work at the time. So what I had was seasoned teachers teaching, and I was a new student. And I was picking up because the right mind or the seer or the knowing was very happy and contented to be on Gather. And I had friends that would say to me, why is it that you are not coming to meetings, going out? This is not healthy. You're on a computer. Well, you know what? Realistically, we live in a computer if we're listening to the ego. It's a computer of our past stories, past ideas, past fears, past everything, Now, I think the real strength is to know that everybody's equal. And why do I say that? Because the ego will have this mind believe that I'm not there yet. That was just so important for me to finally get. And it came at the exact time it needed to come, right? Because everything does. This is a perfect storm, perfect dream, the way it unfolds. So what does Ken say when he says this? And he's right. He says this lesson is particularly beautiful one and should be read as a meditation. Now, a lot of people say that Jesus in the Course doesn't say meditate. But if you really look at these lessons, it's all meditation. And, there's still a lot of ideas on Facebook about, should we trust a teacher? Do we put our faith all in a teacher outside of us? And what I've learned is you can't make a mistake here because everything's a lesson. But it's all coming from within. It's all coming from within us, and it's not coming from the outside. So when a lot of the experiences I've had in the lessons are that no teacher ever taught me, because our inner teacher takes what is good for us and leaves the rest, right? So if I leave, it doesn't mean anything. If I leave a group, it doesn't mean that I made that decision. That decision came from inside. Everything comes from inside. And the ego then will say, well, this is why I left, blah, blah, blah. And it'll find a grievance. It has to, because that's the only thing it can see is judgment. Well, I left because she did this. And I fell down the rabbit hole many times. But the thing that I loved about Gather from the beginning was that it was always a shared community. And, Holy Spirit knew that this was something that we would have in Gather and brought us back to the same, I guess it's so kind to be equal, right? Because let's say someone, I've had shifts, I've had awakening experiences, and yes, my picture has changed. And yes, I still have the ego, and it's easier for me not to listen to it now. But I also can still fall down, and I can come to this group and tell the truth that I fell down the rabbit hole, and then I get the comfort from my mighty companions that it's okay, right? And so you don't need to double dip in guilt when that happens, because, as Dove says, it's always good to laugh. So he says, and it can note that when Jesus speaks of resting in God, it is in contrast to the disquiet and dis-ease of the world. Thus, we see again his emphasis on contrasting truth and illusion. His rest of true quiet and the egos of murder. I am quiet and peaceful because I got what I wanted. I won and you lost, and so I rest in triumph. Note too how the phrase I rest in God reoccurs almost as a musical motive. And that is true. I mean, it's just so simple. But readiness comes from spirit, and readiness, and this is why I think we all came back together as a group in Gather, and it keeps getting bigger, because I think at one point when you realize that you're already that, and that there's nothing to get but an unfolding. And it will happen on your own, too. I mean, it's kind of like certainty happens when exactly it's supposed to happen. And what I do feel is so important is like on Monday, I was listening to you, Dove, share, and there were a couple of our mighty companions maybe saying that, they were dealing with separateness. And I had that on Monday, too. I had a lot of pain. The ego was making stories up. I was in physical pain, and it just had a whole bunch of reactions. So I was telling Lynn the other day that I did the 6-step process. I love that. That's Diedrich's process. It helped me to just get rid of all the judgments I had against myself. Because any judgment is a judgment that's going to hurt me. Now, there's a difference between judgment and discernment. Discernment is when I think, well, that's not for me right now, or that's not what I see. I was listening to Robert Perry and Emily yesterday talking about spiritual, that we don't need to give, spiritual authority to a teacher. And it was very good. I don't really listen to them much. I'm not guided there, but I do like them. They're very kind. And I do feel that's the most important thing. And to me, a good teacher of God is humble, right? Doesn't need to say where you're at in this process. Why would it even matter when we're all the same? We're all this awareness of God, and it's a reflection of God. And I couldn't be more grateful to you, Dove and Lynn, for bringing us all back together. Over to you, Dove.
Oh, that
Oh,
was
and Regis or Lynn.
that was very well said, Sharon, and I appreciate your focus on the equality and the sameness and the oneness, because that's exactly where humble kindness comes from. Uh, there's there's nothing to prove. Uh, there's nothing that has to be said literally. You just say it in a way that's a matter of fact. I was looking. I'm doing a thing on Ken Wapnick. I have 34 quotes from Ken, which uh, John Mundy asked me usually around our birthday, and our birthday's coming up in early May. We do something. As it happens, my birthday comes out on Mother's Day. Actually, I was born on Mother's Day, but I was born on May 12th, 1940, which was Mother's Day. But so John doesn't want to have a service, a Sunday service on Mother's Day, because he knows people want to be with their mothers. So we're going to have it on May 5th. And he says, what should we talk about? And I said, I got these quotes from Ken Wapnick. He said, oh, that's great. So on May 5th, I'm doing the quotes. I have one here that I'm going to put up here in the room now. Put up in, I already put it in Gather. Jesus is helping us to realize it's not only what we see that has no meaning. What I'm thinking about has no meaning. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. That's one of my favorite lessons. Yeah. Which is pretty much why lesson 1 and lesson 2 is the entire course, really. Nothing I see here means anything. And just in case you think anything means something, go on to lesson number 2 and says, yeah, I'm giving all the meaning that it has for me. As it turns out, on May 6th, I'm going to be doing on Miracle Monday, which is run by Stephanie and Lloyd Lapp. I'm sure most of you know Stephanie and Lloyd. Uh, uh, on May 6th, which is the Monday after the Sunday with John, I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing a thing on Ken Wapnick quotes. So I told Stephanie, I said, I get a whole bunch of quotes from Ken. She says, how about a David quote? I said, the only quote I got is you got to laugh. And it's true. I mean, what else can you say when you realize that you're making it all up? What else can you possibly say? I'm doing this to myself. I'm making it all up. It's my imagination. So my meaningless thoughts in today's lesson, I rest in God, which I put up here in the just above what I put in the chat. I rest in God, lesson 109. It says, this does not mean that you do not see the world's hate. That's what Ken says, but it does mean you don't let it disturb your peace. If you see the world's hate and you're reacting to it, that's the guilt in us. But if you really want to rest in God, you say, I don't want any part of this world anymore. And that's the way out of the world, because there is no world. I mean, Ken keeps going back to that over and over. It happens that's in my birthday lesson, lesson 132. There is no world. Paragraph 6. This is the central theme that this course teaches. So, you can talk about the world all you want, but we talk about nothing. Zero. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. There is no world. You gotta laugh, really. There is no world. You gotta laugh. What else can you do? Regis, are you laughing?
Well, you want me to go here? Is Regis going to pick up, or maybe he's just resting? God, because because it's early there in Colorado.
Smiling. Oh,
You
that's
know,
not
I
in,
am going to get my hearing checked again because I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. But again, who knows why I have this sensitivity to hearing. And again, it's so important to listen to the silence. That's where everything comes from. And when we listen to the silence, we realize that's what we are. The thing that I love about being an ego is the laughter. I'm a big laughing. I love to laugh like a hyena because it releases, And so, this morning I went on my walk with my dog, and, it was kind of the most beautiful way. I was greeted by this young man who was with a dog, and he was all love, just so beautiful the way he was, speaking to me. And it was like a joining, yet, it was only a projection in my mind, right? Just like Sharon is also a projection in my mind. So, there's not a rush here, right? There's nothing to rush, because what is Jesus really asking us? To rest. And the discernment that, I have, like, there's preferences, of course. I still prefer some food over others. I still prefer politics to go a certain way, but that's preference. That's not judgment. However, when I let the ego out, it becomes very, it's projecting a lot of stuff, because you see, that's how we clear. So if we see a certain political figure and we think what he's doing and they're crazy, that's really me seeing that craziness. Because if you're in the ego, you have to be nuts. Because number one, it's an insane voice talking to itself. And number two, there's not a nice ego on the planet. And one of the things that I have seen is, as an ego, I thought I was a nice ego. I did, until I realized, and it really was a great lesson on Monday, because I screamed at my husband for no reason whatsoever, mainly because of the school that I was at, and blah, 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 blah. That it was all the stories that came up through my mind. The stories were like, I don't need to do this work. I was at a junior high and I had to walk from one side to the other. And and I was listening to the darkness. So when Ken Wapnick has taught us, pay attention. You can't completely let go of the ego. You won't want to unless you see how mean it really is. And yes, you can see it in others, but that doesn't help us, because that's the game of the ego. When you see it in yourself, immediately what I did was apologize, but also I got to see how evil the ego is. I mean, it can be really mean. It's a mean thought system. It's all judgment. It never stops saying, well, I don't like her hair, and she's too heavy, and oh my God, she's so thin. It's all, so when I watch TV now, I am neutral. I remain neutral. In neutrality, you're in peace. There's no decision. And doesn't the course actually teach us that? What we were sharing on Tuesday night was about, that basically, the Path of Heart, the book that we did on Tuesday nights and Monday nights, that I haven't really gone because it's late for me to go. So I just don't. I do like the book, but it's just a book of love. It doesn't have to mean that anything's going to happen in whatever years they were saying. It doesn't mean that. It's just like every book that guides you to who you are is there for us. I see truth in everything. It's funny because when a course teacher says, well, you're over that, like as if these were our training wheels, that's also ego. Because how could anything this deep be anything that you're over? This course is brilliant. It's done in a way that, I mean, Robert Perry was saying that yesterday, that, if that it's wisdom beyond this world, right? It just is. And it speaks to the heart, and it speaks to sameness. And, everything that we do, like in a day, These are appearances showing up in our minds. And to think that I was believing that it's a nice ego is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. Because when I saw myself yell, I remembered, memory came back of my 40s. I was not well then. In 5 years, I lost everything. And that was not easy for an ego, right? Because I was bitter, but it was all for me. All for me. And everything is, as Rafi always says. So, we begin with appearances, namely, you and I are different with different goals. There's no one that has a different goal here. We all want to go home. Oh, yes. Lynn just wrote May 5th at 5 p.m. is the celebration life for Glenn. Yeah, I want to go to that. Yeah, I think he was an absolute gem. I stopped going in there just because of my guidance, but I always loved Yolanda and Glenn. They were just such free spirits. Anyway, I was going to say next Thursday, I will be in Texas. Well, actually, no, I think, yeah, I will. I'll be in Texas. So I will listen. I think I'll be on my way to the airport in the morning. So I probably will just listen. And yes, I am going to meet Vivian for the first time. She's a friend I met on Gather years ago, 9 years ago. And Cher will meet me too. They become friends. So that will be fun. But Cher and I have met each other. And this year, it will not be political because we have different interests politically. And I asked them, don't make it about that, right? Because, I don't like the idea that any of us think that someone's wrong here. If someone picks a political party that I don't like, is it my business? Does it have anything to do with love? If it's not loving, I don't want it. So, because I love these two women. They're just good women, I love hearts. And a heart is someone, when a heart is open, you can feel it. Why? Because it's the energy. So that's what I wanted to tell you. And over to you now, Doug.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say that. I mean, politics divides people for sure. A long time ago, I heard man is a political animal. The word politics doesn't really matter. What matters is man is a divided animal. That's why we're here. We have a split mind. Our mind is divided. Whether you're divided in politics or religion or business, it doesn't really matter. I don't think there's anything in this world that people can look at in this world and say, well, I don't like that or I like this. Of course, that's a judgment. Of course, only judgments hurt us. The moment you judge anything based on anything in this world, whether it's politics or music or art or sports, I mean, look at sports. I mean, people actually hate other cities or other countries for no reason other than it's not their country, it's not their city. I mean, man is a divided animal. I mean, that's it. So I took a look at I rest in God, and I'm going to put it up here in the chat. I rest in God, completely undismayed. This thought will carry you through storm, strife, past misery, pain, past loss, and death, onward to the certainty of God. There is no suffering it cannot heal. I like that. There is no suffering it cannot heal. So what you're really saying here is, I don't want the world anymore. And that's the whole idea of the sports. There is nothing here you really want. Lesson 128, there's nothing in this world I want. 129, but beyond this world, there is a world I want. And then 130, it's impossible to be in two different worlds. So when you say, I rest in God, you're choosing where you really want to be. And what is God but the oneness, the sameness, the equality, the infinite mind of the eternal. You don't want to live in time anymore. You don't want to live in time. You want to rest in now, the eternal now. It goes on to say there's no problem that this can't solve. Wow. No appearance, but will turn to truth before the eyes of you who rest in God. So, what's actually left is the beliefs in what's going on in this world. And like the course actually uses the word meaningless persuasion. Meaningless persuasion. And I think you find that in lesson 106, let me be still and listen to the truth. And in paragraph 3, it says, be not afraid today to circumvent the voices of this world, and the voice of politics, a voice of sports, a voice of business, a voice of, everything in this world has a voice. It says, walk lightly past their meaningless persuasion. Sure. The ego is persuading you to get invested in things of this world. The word investment always reminds me of lesson 48, where he says, there is nothing to fear. This is a fact. Then he says, it's not a fact if you're still invested in illusion. So getting back to the idea of anyone that is invested in anything in this world, like politics, that will keep you separate and divided. And it's not that it's the politics that is doing it, it's the ego in your mind that says that you're different, you're separate. Others are different from you and they're separate. And that's the whole idea of what this world is about. It's a world and the belief in separation, a separation that never happened. The only sin that the course ever talks about is the belief in separation. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about sports teams, politics, the idea and the belief of you or me, us or them, which is what the course calls sacrifice. It's one or the other, either I win or you win, but I want us to win. I don't care about you. So congratulations on going to Texas. I know you're going to be seeing Vivian, and she's really a good lady, a very good lady, and you're going to see Miss Shara. And things happen in this world that we have no understanding of. But to try to understand it is exactly what the ego wants us to do, which is why I like to say, hey, you got to laugh. Because when you say you got to laugh, you don't want to understand anything anymore. You just don't want, there's nothing here to understand. As Werner Erhard, one of my first teachers from S said, understanding in this world is the booby prize. And
I just love that you said that. That's wonderful.
And the course does the same thing. I mean, the course says your understanding is not necessary. Only your willingness is necessary. And I think it's in that section of the text, chapter, where is it? Chapter 18, section 4, a little willingness. He says, I know that you think that your understanding means something, your understanding is meaningless, like everything else in this world, meaningless. The ego loves to say, I want to understand, I don't understand this yet. When I understand it, then I'll know it. No, it's the exact opposite. When you understand something, you're not going to know it. That's why Ken Wapnick is famous for saying, this is not a 2 + 2 = 4 world where you can understand things. It's a 2 + 2 = 5 world where your understanding is meaningless, literally. Over to you.
Yeah, it's funny because if I knew this when I was like a child, it would have helped me because honestly, the only thing that I understood as a child was love. That's just the truth. my parents didn't always show that to each other. And, I was scared of that because, coming into a world where you were love and then you're seeing people that have the opposite. But let's talk about the fact that this is a veil over love, right? Like all the hate that appears here is just the story, and it has absolutely nothing to do with who we are. It's made up and it's all about appearances. It's all about the complete opposite of God, right? It's an attack on God. So, and what's God except a concept? It's really a better word might be reality. Reality is what's here right now. It's the here-ness, the here-ness, the oneness, the beingness. And what I also wanted to talk about today was the miracle that we have to just even seemingly appear here. I mean, here we are in God all the time, never leaving God. And then a part breaks off and comes into a dream of suffering. And it's just the perfect story if we watch The Wizard of Oz. It's all about that. We forgot the power that we had, right? And if you look at it like a magnificent symphony that's unfolding perfectly, then you feel the power of to just sink into it, rest. On the level of content, we are not asked to deny our frantic fantasies, but simply to understand they have no effect on truth. Well, then, of course, as an ego, I could say, well, it affects me. Or when Dove was in the hospital and he asked the Holy Spirit, about what was it for, what happened with his cancer, he said, you're perfectly cared for. But Spirit's not talking to the body, right? The body is just, a communication device. It's not anything but a suit we wear temporarily, seemingly looking like it's, that I'm 69 and, I've been here 69 years. And that's another story. I'm only here now. When I went to sleep last night, I had no idea where I was. I was in another world of dreams that my mind was making up. And the only thing that would, ever scare us, and this is where the laughter has to come in, is we're believing our thoughts. So I had these fears, I remember, maybe it was a couple of years ago, and I woke up and I had like Daffy Duck, I think. I don't even know. It was one of those ducks that came like a cartoon vision, and it was like projected from my mind, and it was just saying, just laugh. And that's pretty much what this Holy Spirit that we all have wants us to do. Because if you take this process seriously, you're thinking that the person's doing it, and they're not. There's no person, when somebody will say like, they're not compromising. It's all oneness. And that would be Keith Kavanaugh. He doesn't compromise one bit. Well, that's a good thing. But you get there by climbing the ladder. And the climbing of the ladder can be slow at one point and faster at others. And there's nothing wrong as we are, making a transformation through, Spirit's doing that for us to still acknowledge that we are in this body, that this is a physical universe, and that we can enjoy it. We don't have to judge it. We can enjoy it. Now, back up 4 years ago, I was not that nice to my friends about who they were voting for because I was still near deep in the story of Hitler, and I'm Jewish, and blah, 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 blah. My husband is concerned there'll be a war now, right? And I watch my mind when he says that, because there's this one part of us, and that's the ego, that still wants us to remain afraid, right? So the comforter that I have in me and everyone else does is says to me, don't even go there. Nothing's happening, period. And fear is just a distraction from right here, right now. The ego wants us not to be in the presence. It will bring us back and say, go get something to eat, right? Go watch that show. Tell Cliff something, whatever it may be. It's smart, and his bag of tricks is there. But the laughter is the thing that gets us completely to the stillness, I feel. In timelessness, you rest while time goes by without its touch upon you. For your rest can never change in any way at all. You rest today. Jesus describes a positive split in our experience. We walk this earth as others do, but there remains a part of our mind that is fully aware of Jesus's love. This allows us, regardless of the body's busyness or world events, never to lose our peace. Thus, we do not leave the world, but the ego's thought system. That's all that's going to happen when we die, I think. But again, I could be wrong. Maybe we go somewhere else. Who knows? And that could be a big surprise. But anyway, he says the familiar closing paragraph, I need do nothing, summarizes the split awareness wherein we are at rest, even though our bodies may be quite active. And then on text chapter 18, he says, yet there will always be this place of rest to which you can return. And you will be more aware of this quiet center of the storm than all its racing activity. This quiet center in which you do nothing will remain with you, giving you rest in the midst of every busy doing on which you are sent. From this center will you be directed how to use the body sinlessly. We thus see the power of A Course in Miracles as a spiritual path. On one hand, we learn the illusory nature of the world, while on the other, we are encouraged to be instruments of peace within the world of illusion. There's this song in From a Distance that Bette Midler, sings. And, a lot of times Rafi will say that we're all this divine. It's all divine here. I mean, it really is. It's this aliveness I see in the space that, that we are as the one being. And it's kind of like, to a point when we listen to that song, that we're just vessels. That's all we are, talking vessels. There's no person there except an appearance. So, as far as, meeting everybody where they are, well, if I expect people to meet me where I am, I better do that same thing. When somebody has issues, I don't want to say to them, well, it's not really happening, because they're not in that process. Until that person is there, I want to see what my inner teacher says. What I tell myself is they're the Christ. What I say to them might be something different. But, what I wanted more than anything, and this is the truth, was before I left this planet, I wanted to know that I was love. That was something I knew as a child. I think we all have that memory. None of us are special. And we gravitate towards actually being held by each other, because that's what the Father does. And, as we all know, there's no separation with the Father and the Son. So in the story, did I, Sharon, pick my part? No, it's not saying that. It's saying I, awareness, picked my part. I, awareness. I, spirit, picked my part. And, I could say this was tough, but I don't think so. And looking back now, when I was going through it in the ego, it will always dramatize it. But if you look around the world now and you see what some beings have to go through, even though they're seemingly going through it and truth has not left them, it's kind of, important in that way to have empathy, and meet them with the true empathy, seeing them as the Christ, but empathizing like, nonviolent communication, looking at their needs, right? And their feelings. Because when we get that, the ego can relax. The ego can relax. That's all that's going to happen here, to have a balanced ego, when we no longer believe that it has anything to give us, right? Now, Lynn and I are reading Bill Thetford's book, and I'm excited with that because, I'm a big fan of Bill Thetford. I think he was there was something in me that always found him so gentle. And I'm a fan of Helen's too, in many ways. She probably wouldn't have liked me because I have a learning disability, and she didn't have patience for people's grammar. Now, I speak well, but when I write, it's kind of like I just tuned them out when I was a child. I was like, oh, this is so boring. Why did I think I was boring? Because I couldn't do it. And that was happening through me. It wasn't me, Sharon, that couldn't do it. It was just the way this brain showed up. But the right mind was very strong from the beginning. However, because it was strong, the ego would say, well, you're just a doormat. And it appeared that way sometimes. But really, it was just resting because I couldn't deal with some of the ways other egos showed up. But it was telling me, as a student of Course in Miracles, those were my thoughts that I was disowning. Because every ugly thought that's out there is ours. There's not one being that doesn't have it. You can't be just a little pregnant. You can't just be a little ego either. Because ego doesn't exist, but the story of the ego is that it's one. Just like the story of awakening is that it's one. And I do think it's interesting when people do have awakenings, they want to teach it because we all want to help each other. That's just a natural thing for any being because we're all one. We're all love. We love each other intensely. So I'm excited, Dove, that you'll be on Course in Miracles support. I love what they put on. I always listen. If I can't get there on Mondays, I think Lloyd and Stephanie are absolutely precious. Amy Torres was on last week, and I love her. She's just someone that you just want to just give a big hug to, right? You'll be on. And you know what I'm loving, Dove, to watch you on all these different places because you were significant in my awakening from the beginning. So over to you.
All right. And you'll be very happy to hear that your good friend Keith Kavanaugh is going to be on
Yeah.
program the Monday before. Next Monday, this coming Monday, Julia Day. Julia used to teach right here on ACIM Gather, about 10 years ago, about 12 years ago, maybe before that. She's from Vancouver, Canada, and she'll be on this coming Monday. And then Keith Kavanaugh is going to be on in 2 Mondays, and I'm going to be on in 3 Mondays. Yeah, I was listening to your thing on Bill Tedford being a very gentle, kind guy. I was thinking how it was perfect how you had these 2 personalities that was kind of necessary for something like the Course of Miracles to have birth in. You had the kind, gentle, very docile Bill Tedford, and I'm kind of chuckling when you said, "Well, Helen probably wouldn't appreciate me because," you came up with a thing. Yeah, she was very headstrong. In that coupling, yeah, she was kind of the masculine, and he was the kind of the feminine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you kind of needed that to say there must be a better way, because we don't get along. There's got to be another way. And then Jesus said, "Yeah, there is another way. Take notes." So, yeah, I always say that he was the first graduate of A Course in Miracles. I don't think you could say that Helen graduated the course. She was the midwife. I think that's a word that I hear you use a lot. We're all midwives. Hi, Zoma.
I don't know if I ever used that. I'm not really sure.
Not you then. It's somebody else in this room.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter because whoever's voice comes up is perfect. So
somebody says we're all midwives. Oh, I know who it is. It's Brooklyn. Brooklyn.
Oh, yes, she has some beautiful things to say. Yes.
We're all midwives. Yeah. And basically that's what Helen was. She was definitely the midwife. But Bill was the student who listened and graduated before it. Which we all know that story of July 3rd and July 4th. July 3rd, he says, I'm happy. Okay, so happiness is simply the idea that I used to be unhappy and now I'm happy. You know, happiness and healing and God, they're all the same. I know they use different words, but healing and happiness and peace and love, they're all the same. You know, words are twice removed from the experience, and if you listen to Jesus and A Course in Miracles, that words are used to separate and divide. Language is not used. The language of heaven is abstract. Abstract means whatever is known by all instantly. Nothing has to be communicated in heaven. It's one mind, one mind. I did put on the board something from lesson 106. Let me be still and listen to the truth. It says, be not afraid today to circumvent the voices of the world. So the voices of the world is basically the belief system, is the lies of the world. It's the voices of the world are set out to deceive. It says, listen not to these voices. Walk lightly past their meaningless persuasion. Yeah. You got to laugh at what we call the influences these days. Yeah, there's always somebody to influence us, and they talk about artificial intelligence is now going to be influencing at even a higher rate. Can you imagine a world that has a higher degree of influences and deceptions? And that's exactly what AI is inviting into the world. It's whatever it is that I want to say, I can say on a megaphone now, and it may sound true, but it's just more of the same. Beliefs. Nothing in this world really means anything. Be still today and listen to the truth. Go past all things which do not speak of him who holds your happiness within his hands, held out to you in welcome and in love. Hear only him today. Now, him is the idea of freedom, idea of beingness, of peace. So, the word him hardly speaks of the idea of freedom from tyranny. The world is tyranny for sure. And do not wait to reach him longer, him being freedom. Hear one voice today, one voice, the voice of freedom. Okay, over to you, love. And if you want to say something, Zuma, please do.
Zuma too. Yeah, anybody can join in. Anyway, one of the things it says here, like that I've been doing, is practice today's idea with gratitude. I'm reading a book about gratefulness, the fullness of life. To be grateful is in the moment, to just see how much we have, even in the dream. The taking for granted that I can see, that I can walk into my bathroom, that I can, all the things that we have as even this illusion doesn't, because the ego mind's so judgmental, it doesn't allow us to really appreciate the holy instant, right? Because it's afraid of it. Mainly because I know if we know that we're the holy instant, we are presence only, and there is nothing here, the ego is gone. So, gratefulness is the fullness of life, to be grateful that you even had an opportunity to come here. Now, what does that really mean, come here? Well, to have a dream and then end up knowing it wasn't real, that's a true gift. And to know that you're the knowing and you're not the person is another gift. Nobody had a good dream here. How can you? You know, how can anyone get everything they want? You know, what Ken was saying is the practice today's idea with gratitude. This is the truth that comes to set you free. This is the truth that God has promised you. This is the word in which all sorrows ends. This is the truth that corrects the ego's lies and frees us from ego's tyranny of guilt and hate, and thus ends all sorrow. The world has become the classroom in which the Holy Spirit teaches us the opposite of what we had learned. He shows the truth of our relationships and asks us only to accept it that it may be shared with all who shrink back to darkness. It's funny, I have 3 sisters, and the little one was always my favorite. And see, what happens when you have a favorite is the others feel it, you know. And, you know, I had released that belief about a month ago. It just came when it came, right? Because it can't be a favorite sister. I mean, yes, there can be preferences, but, you know, to see one as better than the other is just back in the same old judgment. So, you know, when I look at text chapter 5, the ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. That is all we want, is to go home, right? Let me be still and be home. You know, we have a misperception about death, like it's bad. Well, when we go to sleep at night, we love it. Why? Because we're not hearing the mind's ridiculous duality. So when we're no longer here, we'll be in bliss, total bliss. So that's something to just, death doesn't have to be, you know, the conditioned mind believes it's bad, because it's the ego that believes it's bad. The beliefs are just ridiculous, you know. So anyway, he sees you have not made truth, but truth can still set you free. There's only one that makes truth. Truth is true. You cannot usurp it, right? Look at the Holy Spirit's looks and understand as he understands. He is your guide to salvation, because he holds the remembrance of things past and to come and brings them to the present. He holds this gladness gently in your mind, asking only that you increase it in his name by sharing it to increase his joy in you. Thus do we share gratitude with our brothers, having happily welcomed truth into our minds at last. You know, you were talking about, you know, I'm having a mental block, which I get a lot, you know. It wasn't about Amy Torres. It was about the, you know, who they're having on as a Course in Miracles support, Julia Day. Now, here's a woman that is just this bright light that I see on Facebook. I don't know her. So she was asking about, you know, that she wanted to do the lessons and send lessons to us on WhatsApp. And I always go for stuff like that. And every morning I wake up and go on WhatsApp and listen to beautiful Julia Day's voice, because it's very, very soothing, you know. And I'm also watching Kate Greaves on Facebook, always trying to help. That's what we want to be. We want to, you know, to be helpful. Come on, if you're a light worker and you've been given this as, you know, your role, well, it's time now to play it. You can't be a light worker and have judgment, right? So to remember I am as God created me. His son can suffer nothing, and I am his son. Then with this statement firmly in your mind, try to discover in your mind the self who is the Holy Son of God himself. This lesson series closed with the return of the theme that our true self is Christ, God's one son. It's interesting, you know, when I found out that Christ meant pure mind, I was probably in my, you know, I probably heard it before, because in Greek they do say that, but people that are, you know, Christian believe that Christ means, that's his last name, Jesus Christ. And the funniest thing is that, there was a lot of resistance in this mind when this came to me because of all the stuff that I swallowed from my upbringing. My grandmother spoke Yiddish, her parents were from Russia. They had like a commitment to really save the Jews because we were chosen. Well, that's also a story. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to believe that anything is special here. It's what Dub was saying. It's all nothingness, by seeking reality, we are assured we will find it. Well, when we don't deny it, it's right here, right now. What do you mean it's right here, right now? I don't see anything. That's exactly right. There's an awareness of presence. It's an aliveness. I was crying, maybe it was about 7 years ago, about my child that was suffering. And, this light came into my mind as I was walking that I got to see, and it was spirit reaching out to me saying, oh no, that's not even you. What's happening is just a thought in your mind. But at the time, I was so confused, I didn't realize how much Holy Spirit is here all the time for me, for my mind. All I have to do is stay with me, Spirit. Stay with me now. And why does the book tell us to ask what we could say? Because the first thought that we have will always be the wrong thought. You've got to pause. Pausing always brings us peace. So, I always want to remove people's pain, but that is not my job, to tell them that this world is not real. If they weren't called to that, I'd be hurting them. And that is not my message that I want to have, What I loved about the Course when it says your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. It is not necessary to seek for what is true, but it is necessary to seek for what is false. Every one of our, mighty companions that have hurt us in the seeming dream have been our helpers, and they are pure love. The story is meaningless when we get that, and it appeared that I had a lot of people that victimized me, but I was a victimizer too. You can't be one without being the other. And it took a little while to get that. And learning to trust the one voice, well, that's just a process. Right here, right now, I trust that this is perfect and all is well. Over to you, Doug.
All righty. Yeah. A couple of things that you said. Well, one was, when a mother favors one over the other, the others feel it. But you have to really remember that nothing happens here by accident. It's like I came from a family where I was not appreciated as much as another one of my siblings. Gary Zukav, when we played that thing when he was on the Oprah show, spoke about it, but you have to recognize that that's what we came into this world for, to learn the lesson of thinking you need approval, thinking that you need to be appreciated. And you finally realize that you don't really need approval. You don't need to be appreciated. That's the idea that you're unloved. So nothing happens by accident. We actually choose the mother and my siblings. You choose them, and everything that seems to happen, that one is favored over another, it's just part of the lessons we came here to learn. And the other thing is, you mentioned Amy Torrey, and I know that Regis plays sometimes to open his program, Amy's meditations. She's really a wonderful teacher. She used to teach here at Gather also. She said something, I was listening to her and dropped in on Lloyd and Miracle Monday, basically. I've dropped in and I heard her say, the purpose of this world is to mess with your head. And I thought that was really a great observation. The purpose of this world is to mess with your head. And then it came to me, no one can mess with your head unless you are valuing the wrong things. And lesson 133 says, I won't value the valueless. If you're valuing the things of this world, which is things that begin in time and end in time, you're valuing the valueless, and the world will mess with your head. What's valuable belongs to all, and if you're valuing what belongs to all, the world cannot mess with your head. That's something that kind of came to me out of Amy's teaching. So I want to thank you, Sharon and Lynn and Regis, Zuma, everybody out there in this radio station of ACIM Gather. Love you all.
Thank you, Dov. Thank you, everyone. Beautiful morning.
Thank you so much, Dov and Sharon. Yeah, beautiful morning. I do